And this evening's event will start with a short presentation by two other members of the steering group, Mike Grace and Howard Horsley, and they'll be talking about the background and opportunities that this neighbourhood plan provides for our community. Following the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. As important, if not more important, we're looking for volunteers to help us develop the plan. Now, the plan will be effectively a community plan and needs the endorsement of the entire community, or at least in some form of poll to be decided. And the speakers will explain how that process works. But we've only had a fairly small team to date, and you'll probably see, when you see the extent of potentially what the plan could cover, we'll need a lot of volunteers to help us develop the ideas and the option.
The neighbourhood planning element of it is one of the key things that the Localism Act talks about. And it's there to, in the government's words, to get past that kind of top-down imposition of planning decisions on local communities. They also have an ambition, has to be said, that they think that by liberalising the planning system a little bit, that more growth will take place. More communities will sign up to having more development on their patches because that's what they want. But because it's their choice, that will happen. And they're incentivising the system through things like what they call the community infrastructure levy. So more of that funding will stay at locality level as opposed to heading off into, in our case, Shrewsbury or elsewhere. So there's a lot of changes going on, and this is part of it, a very important part of it. That said, when the Localism Bill was produced over a year ago now, they did say we want to do some pilots, some what they call front runners for neighbourhood plans, and they chose initially 17, and much Wenlock was one of the 17, which is why we're ahead of things today. We're not waiting for the acts to be implemented, but we're actually been getting on with it. And sometime in the spring, the government March or so, the government said much Wenlock be one of 17, and there are 4 others in Shropshire as well. So we're at the very early stages. It's all about empowering us to make decisions about where development goes, if we want development, what scale, and the rest of it. But we envisage that, as Bob said, it'll be a community-led plan. The Town Council is promoting it and helping it happen with members of the community, and we want it to be owned by a wider set of the community.
I am not a councillor, I'm not a political appointment or elected to any kind of office. I'm just a member of the community in Much Wenlock, and the steering committee is made up of some councillors but also members of the public who have some kind of time to give or some kind of expertise to offer, and we are all trying to work together so that we get a breadth of perspective about what people's ideas are. The other thing that I think is worth saying, backing up what Mike has said, is that the key aspect of the Localism Bill is to change the focus away from top down. In the past, people in Much Wenlock have been very upset, I think it's fair to say, about what they have perceived as the imposition of developments on the community. Now, this was a result not simply of the attitude of Bridge North District Council, although people were critical of that from time to time. The fact was that Bridge North District Council was under a lot of pressure from central government to meet targets in the number of houses that were built within the Bridge North District. The change that's coming with the Localism Bill is that pressure is not going to come from above. It's going to be something that's decided locally.
Some of you remember the town and parish plan. So what's the difference? Well, this one has real bite. It will have statutory force within the planning system, whereas the town and parish plan was the community's views, but it was fairly uncertain whether local authority took any notice of them, they've informed the decisions. This one will go down as a formal part of the decision-making process. So we can decide the needs of the place, the parish, the town, the rural villages, settlements around us. Well, that's what do we want? What's our aspirations? Is it more housing, affordable housing? Is it jobs, employment, land for new offices? Is it better green spaces. The Localism Act and the new National Planning Policy Framework, when it comes out, will talk about the ability to designate more green space. So it's up to us to determine what our needs are, and then what the option would be for putting it in the town or around the town, and what it would look like. How long would it last, this plan? Well, to 2026. Shropshire Council has adopted its core strategy, that's the overarching framework for Shropshire, and we have to conform with that generally, because that gives the strategic policies for the whole of Shropshire.
And the aim is to engage everybody in the community, not just those who are interested, or know that they're going to be interested, or are certain that they have something to contribute, but also those people who may be less confident and might not want to come to a public meeting like this. Or it may be people who are, for example, housebound, or don't come out in the evenings. We've got to get to them and see what they want, not just what we who are here this evening want. But the key thing is that in the long run, it is the community that determines what the priorities should be. The government isn't going to set targets, but it is going to set criteria within which things have to operate. And indeed, it's absolutely clear that we will have to meet some of the obligations which they put upon us, and in particular, one of the most important obligations is to ensure that we have consulted widely enough, because one of the things that a planning inspector must approve is the fact that we have actually gone through a consultation process which involves a sufficiently high proportion of the population and the community.
The big difference here for the neighbourhood plan is that we get to choose what the principles are. Why do we want certain types of development, and how do we want it to happen? How do you keep that off, was the question we asked ourselves as a steering group. Well, we looked at the parish plan, we looked at the core strategy in Shropshire, and we thought we'd build a conversation with you and the rest of the community around a number of themes. An overarching one about sustainable community. What does that mean? Sustainability, you see it every day in the press, and sustainable development is part of the conversation the National Trust is having with David Cameron. What do we think a sustainable Wenlock would look like? What would it look like in 2026 at the end of the period this plan would cover? What are the principles that we would wish to have to underpin development? How green would it be? How low carbon? Those kind of things. What kind of housing needs? We know the community always tells us that we need affordable housing for more people, more young people to stay in the town. How many? What type? How do we get them? How do we actually deliver them? How do we get a local economy that grows jobs here? How do we retain young people to stay in the town opposed to going away and not being able to work here? Where would we put those jobs? What kind of jobs? How do we attract them? How do we protect the environment that we have? Everyone loves the environment much better. Not conservation area on the edge of the Shropshire Hills. What is it that we can do to help it more? How can we do our obligation? We have a statutory duty actually to biodiversity. It's one of the few things statutory duties parish councils have. How do we do that? And community services, a bit of an umbrella phrase, but we've got a problem with flooding, you may have noticed. How do we fix that? What does development in the future need to do to make sure it doesn't exacerbate flooding? How can we get contributions to help fix the flooding problem? How do we get the right recreation facilities? The sort of things that we need on a day-to-day basis as a community.
So when we've done that and we've got all this together, then we've got the idea, we've got the really major job of trying to make sense of what people say. And that's actually very challenging, because different people will say different things, and being able to interpret that is an enormously complex and demanding task. And out of all of that, we've then got to decide what are going to be the priorities which are identified in our neighbourhood plan as we present it, first to the community and then to the planning inspectorate. And at each of these stages, your help will be very much appreciated.
I think one of the things that will come out of this is addressing the other sorts of issues that are associated with the town. And Shropshire Council have something called a place plan, which is essentially a description of the investment that the community needs. And it's a bit, the copy is next door actually, you can see them later, but it's a bit kind of unfinished at the moment. But this neighbourhood plan will drive that, so that will actually tell statutory agencies, other people with funding, investors, where we wish to see investment in the community. What we do know, because the parish plan and the surveys that we've been doing, that we need affordable houses. That's clear. So that's the starting point of the conversation. What we don't know is how to deliver those. We haven't decided how many, we haven't decided where we would put them. So all that is for a conversation in the next 12 months. And we will need to talk to housing associations, house builders, landowners, and many landowners have been invited to come along tonight as well because they're part of the solution to all this. But we're starting off on that journey, as Bob said earlier, strictly boring, too much TV. And we will work that out over the next 12 months. And nothing is out.
I hope that this will mean that the people of Much Wenlock will feel confident in the planning process in a way in which they haven't been in the past, where they've tended to feel that the decisions are made outside of Much Wenlock, which they then have to live with. This gives them an opportunity to contribute in a way which can provide a much more certain future for their own community.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it allows them to engage in a debate about what is the right level of development and the right future for Much Wenlock. So they can build it up from their own experiences, they can understand the facts and the figures behind things, not have it imposed upon them from outside, and take power and control over that. And when we're faced with decisions around the scale of development, when planning applications come in, that will be familiar territory. They'll be able to say, yes, that's the sort of thing we wanted, therefore let's agree, let's go on, let's move forward, rather than fighting it and perhaps quite often losing badly.
A plan that people, A, feel confident with, and B, gets approval from the inspectorate. And that's a tall order.
And a plan that has the full backing of the community. Now, we won't get everybody saying exactly the same thing, but if there's a broad consensus about how Much Wenlock should grow and develop over the next 15 or so years, that'll be no mean feat.
Means of checking what they said, which is fine. They say the right things now.
I'm actually a volunteer with a steering group in Much Wenlock. I actually live outside the area, but I'm very interested because Much Wenlock is ahead of the game and as a forerunner. So I've come along to help them bring my expertise in community engagement and see all the conversations that need to go on. And it's been very interesting so far. I'm thoroughly enjoying the energy and the commitment that's here. So we are aiming through these events to engage people initially, but we recognise that we're not reaching everybody through these. So we're going to have a bit of a roadshow and go out to tackle people, go to their estates, go to their village green, go out to the outlying hamlets and take the message out to them. So I hope we will manage to get most people's views and for them to come across with what they like about Much Wenlock, why they like living here and what they want to, how they want it to develop in the future, and encourage everybody to take part.
I've got involved with this project because I love Much Wenlock and I've lived here for 15 years, and about 10 years ago I was mainly responsible for producing this document, the Much Wenlock Design Statement, and this new opportunity to do the neighbourhood plan offers a chance to do a much more thoroughgoing job covering the natural environment as well.
Yes, I mean we've been involved for many years in the planting of trees and the environment. Farming's been very involved for centuries in how the countryside looks around here, and I just want to make sure that we all sing from the same hymn sheet and get it right. Good farming and good tourism go hand in hand.
To be part of a process where you live, you actually have the one chance in a lifetime to look where you want it to be in 15 years. Very rarely does that sort of opportunity come around. So it's a great it's great to be part of that process, really. I think the challenge really is to engage the people who haven't been here, particularly the younger families, because Tuesday evening, Saturday morning, not ideal for that, and also to engage the sort of teenage sort of where they'd like to see, because in 15 years' time they're going to be the young parents of tomorrow. So I think we need to build on this, but just try and think of how we can better engage with these other groups that haven't been here.
What the government's giving us here, the opportunity, and other neighbourhoods, is for us to determine the type of development and land use that we need for the next 15 years or so. So it's a fantastic opportunity. Housing's the obvious first candidate to look at, because there's clearly an imbalance in the housing provision currently. We've got a changing population, but the main developers seem to be more concerned about putting in executive type homes with a token accommodation of affordable homes. That's possibly not what the community is looking for. Currently most people commute outside Wenlock for work purposes, so they live here but commute outside. And I think it'd be a really great opportunity to provide better provision to try to help existing businesses to expand, give them room to expand in the town, and also attract new businesses into the town. So one of the things we'll be asking the community is, what types of jobs are we looking for? Are we talking about professional jobs? Are we talking about workshops? Whatever we need premises for people to move into. We've had occurrences in the past where successful businesses have looked to expand, but there are no premises suitable, so they've had to move out of the town.
Well, having been very much concerned some years ago with the parish plan and learning from the experience of that about the involvement of people in the town and in the planning, I think it's a wonderful opportunity now with the changes in the planning, government planning, that we actually still continue the work, involve as many people as we can in the town, having their opinions and arriving at a point where everybody agrees that what we finish up with in a year's time will work and is something that gives us the power and much more control on planning matters, sustainable matters, everything about Much Wenlock Town.
It became obvious that it was going to be a very important project for the town, and that it would have immense value for the future of the town, particularly concerning young people right up until 2026. We see it going forward as it's over a long process. It'll be at least another year before it's finalised, but we hope eventually to come out with a consensus of the dilemma which Much Wenlock faces about providing houses for its young people, but also retaining the natural rural environment in which it sits.
Yeah, well, I'm involved, I guess, because firstly because I'm a town councillor, and secondly because I'm very interested in Much Wenlock, ensuring it remains a thriving community, and is a sort of place where people find not only attractive to come to, but equally important that people find it attractive to stay here, whether it be for jobs or whether it be for housing. It is very, very important that we get people's views, and right across the parish, right the way from Bourton, from up on the edge, from Homer, and from round the town, so we have a very clear picture about what people's aspirations are in terms of the built environment, in terms of the green environment, in terms of sustainability, and in terms of housing. I want to ensure that everybody in Much Wenlock has their say and that everyone is heard. I don't have any particularly strong views about housing. I do think that it'd be quite good to have more jobs in the town. But really, I want to hear 2,500 people's voices.